There's no sort of one and done formula. It's really about just constantly checking in of what do I really need and what are the stories that might be coming up that are telling me. And sometimes we have to push past things for sure. We definitely can have things but it's having that intimate connection inward and starting to trust. And then, through a lot of this work, I am much more trusting of my intuition. And I think that's a really important place for us to be as women, is to be that inner connection of like, today I really do need to rest and I'm going to honor that so that I have the energy to move into these other spaces, in the coming time.
Hello and welcome to the Bold Life podcast. Today we're joined by Anya Rock, host of the Rock Your Joy podcast, mom, entrepreneur, and certified high performance coach, to talk about how to get out of your comfort zone and go after your goals. Anya has spent 2 decades helping women transform their lives by finding the sweet spot between the hustle and flow, with mindfulness, mindset, and no BS strategies for getting more out of life. She uses her years of experience in yoga and mindfulness, as well as her adventurous spirit, to guide female entrepreneurs out of overwhelm and help them learn to embody joy. Welcome, Anya. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. So excited to
So,
be here.
so I know I introduced you a little bit, but I'd love for our audience to hear more about you and kind of what got you interested in working in this area.
Oh, well, I really just feel like it's been a journey and just following my intuition each step of the way. So I actually started years ago in theater school in New York. That's where I studied yoga for the first time. I always share that yoga really saved me in a post 9/11 New York City, in the emotional throes of theater school, that yoga was, the grounding place that I could go. And ironically, movement and breath, which someone pointed out to me recently is a really, where I've come back to full circle, is incorporating embodiment and breath and these mindful practices into my more, modern life now. But moved to Chicago and began working in a network marketing company alongside of yoga, and built that for about 14 years while I had a family. And I now have 2 kids who are 8 and 10. And a couple of years ago, I just started to feel that kind of itch of what's next. Where do I want to go? And it took some time, but really, I think the important thing is, what I've learned is really honoring that itch, honoring that tug and that feeling of restlessness, or just even it can come up as, some feeling of dissatisfaction in something that used to give me so much joy, and be something I had so much energy for. And so I began to focus more on coaching. And then I started to really realize that a lot of the the coaches I was working with, and the kind of coaching training that I had been in, and then I was able to kind of see back into the trajectory of all the work I'd done, is really based in this masculine energy of hustle. And for my own healing and my own journey, I started to work with and study and explore again some of those more holistic practices. So I studied breath work, and I started to work with an embodiment coach, and I did a mastermind, and really just for my own journey, but realized this is the missing piece for a lot of people, particularly for women, is understanding how do we bring in a sense of our purpose and joy through finding a balance between our masculine energy and our feminine energy, and the power in both, and understanding we both have, it's not um, male or female, it's just these energies that exist within us. And so that's really been most recently how I've been bringing the two together and finding ways, through meditation and mindfulness and breath work and mindset and journaling, and just really asking myself, and then bringing women along for this conversation of what are we here for? What is our purpose? And we really have one shot at this beautiful life, and let's live it in the most authentic and joyful way possible. So how do we do that? How do we get to that place? So that's kind of the long story of where I am,
Yeah.
how I
Yeah.
got to where I am and what I'm doing.
I love that. I'd love if you could tell us a little bit more about what you mean by those differences between masculine and feminine energy, and if we can talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah. So when I say kind of finding the magic spot between the hustle and the hustle for me is a really masculine energy. It's important, and it shows up and it serves a great purpose, right? The getting things done, that energy of like, I even think about now like different kinds of exercise I might be doing and really trying to balance out that all of the exercise I'm doing in my week is not this kind of high intensity, but that I'm balancing that with a more soulful, flowing energy in my workout. So, in the same way in my life and in all the spaces of life, of finding the softness and the strength, because the feminine energy, if you will, has a receptiveness, but a true strength in our ability to pause and to listen and to slow down and to connect in a different way and through a different part of our being. Many of us, when we are in our masculine, when I'm in my masculine, I'm really operating kind of from the neck up, I think, really coming from this space of cerebral. And that's where I was talking about the coaching I was doing. It's great. It's wonderful to sit down with our goals and understand where we want to be and how to get there and have this very intellectual and cerebral idea. But when we drop it into our body and we understand how it feels to be in that place of more success, maybe what's coming up for us and where we're recognizing that in the body, when we integrate those two spaces, we become a lot more powerful.
That's so interesting. I was just talking to someone actually this morning about how hard it often is for us to rest and to take a step back and to get out of that hustle culture. Do you think
Mhm.
these concepts of energy come into play there?
Absolutely. We're taught, and not just as women, but as a society, that rest is weak and,
Yes.
it's just useless. And, you see examples all over the place of just more is better, more workouts. And, um, so I think resting is really sacred. It's really important. And we have to disassociate from this narrative that it's lazy or that it's unimportant. And even teaching my children that rest is important, that, a day off in our pajamas, just hanging around is as important and wonderful as those days when we're out connecting and being with people and being at the beach and doing those other things that both have value. And it's really being able to, and it's not like there's no sort of one and done formula. It's really about just constantly checking in of what do I really need and what are the stories that might be coming up that are telling me. And sometimes we have to push past things for sure. We definitely can have things but it's having that intimate connection inward and starting to trust. And then, through a lot of this work, I am much more trusting of my intuition. And I think that's a really important place for us to be as women, is to be that interconnection of like, today I really do need to rest and I'm going to honor that so that I have the energy to move into these other spaces, in the coming time.
I'd love to get your perspective on this because sometimes when I have clients that ask, we talk about rest, they ask me, they say, Nicole, how do I know the difference between when I just need rest and when I'm procrastinating or avoiding something? Do you have any strategies for finding that difference kind of in your body and your intuition?
I think you can kind of test it a little bit, right? So maybe looking at, I do actually a lot of, I wear an aura ring when I go to sleep, and I take my heart rate variability every morning. And so I'm actually using some scientific data to kind of check in with my body, not just how I'm feeling, which I think is helpful too. So I have real data like, okay, today I didn't sleep super well, and maybe I was up with my kid in the middle of the night, and I woke up and my HRV says you got a score of 4, so take it easy. And my aura ring is like, oh, your temperature's elevated. I know I'm also coming up on my cycle. And so when I have this data, then I can start to tune in. I love cycle syncing, which is kind of another conversation I'm not an expert in at all, but again, becoming really intimate with our rhythms and cycles, that's a huge part of it as women. So if I have all of that data and I'm having a resistance to resting, then it's really just looking at like, well, what is the what is the thing I might be procrastinating for? If you say, well, I'm supposed to write this paper and instead I want to sleep. It's like,
Right.
okay, well, what is it about the paper, right? Is there an emotional charge to it? Is there something coming up for me around it? And can I give myself just a little space? And resting doesn't necessarily mean I take the day off and do nothing. It can
Right.
mean I take a walk in nature and I reconnect, or I just go sit in the grass and I let the sun be on my body for a few moments and I connect with my breath. And then I ask, then you can come back and say, like, am I ready now to approach this in a different energy? So I don't think it also has to be black or white. We can kind of notice. And then, just understanding if there's a lot of resistance, maybe there's something, it's not the time to do that project, or something that needs letting go of. Like there's so many variables that I think are worth really just tuning in and evaluating.
That's super interesting. One thing we talk about a lot on the show, and I'm glad you brought it up, is sometimes there's this disconnect between our mind and our bodies, right? And like you said, we get into, you mentioned the masculine energy where we're thinking about everything neck up, right? It's all of our
Mhm.
head doing all the decisions. And then we ignore the rest of our body. And, from my background, that connection between our brains and our bodies is so important, but we do tend to ignore it
Mhm.
sometimes. Do you find that?
Yeah. And we're just kind of taught to from the beginning, right? We're just kind of taught to like ignore and push past, and there's value in that sometimes. I have a daughter who plays softball, and sometimes you just got to shake it off and you got to get back on the field, and that's important as well. But it can just be too much, right? And you hear athletes to talk about it all the time, like the inability to slow down and honor what's happening because they have so much grit and so much perseverance. And everything has a shadow side, even the most incredible strength.
Yeah, super interesting. So, the other thing we talk about on this show a lot are strategies for productivity. I'm wondering, is there a way to use kind of this mind body connection that we're talking about and our masculine and feminine energies? Is there a way to use this to help us get more done or make better use of our time? What would you recommend?
Yeah, so I always think too, the effort to get more done is sort of like we become a slave to our to-do list,
Right.
and we end up in a cycle of never enough, and it just feeds into this feeling of like, when I get all this done, then I will be worthy, happy. When I blank, then I will
Yes.
be. And so, as you talk about as well, like if we can own this feeling of happy right now and then start to work out from there, really on a daily basis, looking at like what has to get done today. What are my 3 really important projects, or how can I move the needle a little bit on this one project? And then having, at the end of the week by Friday, what are the 5 things that I want to have accomplished, so that I don't wake up Saturday thinking, "Oh my gosh, I have things to do this weekend that I never got done." So I think there's practical choice management tools that we can use, but then also, having a ritual and a routine. For me, it's my mornings. My mornings are precious time for me, that I take to connect inward and kind of set my energy for the day. And then that, I think, allows me a different productivity, but also a different level of focus for the day.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that idea of kind of checking in on ourselves as well, whether that's in the morning or throughout the day. I know that's something I'm working on and I've talked about on the show before is noticing when I'm spiraling, starting to feel super anxious or super stressed or putting all that pressure on myself or having all those shoulds, I should be doing all these things pop up, is to, take a minute and pay attention to what's happening for
Mhm.
me, whether that's inside my body or inside my brain, and really getting clear on, okay, what is triggering this for me? What is it about what's going on that maybe is outside my energy levels for right now or isn't working very well with me? And even taking a few minutes to do some of that reflection can be so helpful in maintaining our energy throughout the day.
Yeah, we spend so much of our time reacting to other people's energy. So something I work with my clients, I don't have any great demands, but I really encourage everybody to carve out time in the morning before the computer, before if there are kids in the house, like before you start tending to other people's needs, that you just take 20 minutes, 30 minutes to just be with yourself and to determine like what is my energy for today? Where, what is going to be the obstacle that gets in my way today? And how am I going to overcome that? And for me, that looks like a meditation. And then, like I said, I always do my HRV reading and I check my aura ring score. And then I do journaling. I do, 10 minutes of journaling every morning. And it's such an important piece of carving out that time. I used to wait to be woken up or kind of run late, and I call myself the wake up and catch up mom. Like I was always reacting to someone else's energy, and it's the same when people like wake up in the morning and pull up their email and you start scrolling, and like it only takes one email to just send you into a spin of someone else's agenda last night when they hit that at 11:40 and you wake up and read it. So it's mastering that early energy in the day before I check in, on email or whatever it is, right? Even on my kids, I want to receive them in the morning when I've already had time to be with myself.
Yeah, I love that. That's another thing that I'm working on as well. I was finding something very similar. I'm good at not touching my phone until I get to my desk, but I have a 4-year-old and she was waking up early for a while. So my days were always starting with like, mom, mom, mom from the other room, right?
Mm.
Which like jolted me awake. I started off stressed. My energy was like way off as soon as I
Yeah.
started going. And then just like you said, I always felt behind all day. Like I'm always starting at this deficit because I didn't have that chance to wake up myself fully. I'm also not a morning person at all. So I need some good time in the morning just to get my brain
Yeah.
going. And when I was being woken up like that, it was really throwing me off. And so now I've started getting up just a few minutes earlier before I know that she'll get up. So I can even just have 15 minutes to like brush my teeth and wash my face and just like allow my brain that space to wake up before I'm pulled, like you said, into someone else's time requirement for the
Mhm.
day. I think that's a great recommendation for all of us.
Yeah, it's become absolutely sacred time to me. I mean, if I think of it like if I missed brushing my teeth, like if I miss my morning routine, I'm like kind of going through the day. Even when I'm traveling, I'll just sit in bed, do a meditation, just take a few moments before I go out into the world.
That's another really great benefit to having that morning routine too. Just like you said, when you're traveling or you're out of our normal space, we talk a lot in the show about how our brains get used to routines and they get used to habit. And it can be really hard when we have to shift those, when we have to all of a sudden work from home because there's a pandemic or we're traveling for work or whatever it is, we feel off, right? So if we have those morning routines, not only is it setting us up for success normally, but it's something that we can carry with us and set us up for success when we're in that new environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I
I
just
really
moved
like that.
to California and everything is new.
Yeah.
And I can feel my brain working in overtime about every new turn and new routes, places, and
Yes.
just the unfamiliarity of everything. And I just can feel it like growing.
Yeah.
Or I tell
Yeah.
myself that anyway.
Yeah. Actually, I'd love to talk about that a little bit more because I know you've pivoted a number of times in your life and really, like you said, changed course in your careers, moved around a whole bunch. That is a lot of change. And most of us don't love getting out of our comfort zone. Can you talk a little bit about how you do that, what that change is like for you, kind of how you make those decisions?
Yeah. So most recently, I moved our family to California from Chicago, and it had really been on my mind and in my heart for years. having moved from New York, I had always wanted to move to LA, and I'm being an actress. And I'm not in the theater anymore. I'm not doing any acting, but I am writing. And I really wanted to be, when we looked at the map of California, I always knew it was Southern. But for many years, I felt like it is really hard. It was really difficult and the more that, you have kids and you have their lives, and there's so many things kind of grounding you in one place. And actually, a lot of the last 2 years, the embodiment, the breath work, this work of igniting the feminine has been a huge part of it, of really trusting myself and trusting that inner intuition and trusting in the outcome, and not really, fear absolutely came up. And but I felt really equipped with the tools. I had, people in my corner. I have coaches, I have a therapist, I have, so many people in my corner that I could go to. And I also had tools to work through that fear and recognize it, and be able to ask my family really to go on this adventure with me and to take a leap of faith. And it's recognizing, kind of like what you said about how do I know the difference between rest and procrastination? Like, how do I know the difference between fear of something really not working out and just the fear that's going to stop us from making change? And it's just really checking in constantly. Like, I can't say, well, if you do this and this and this, then it will all be easy. It's not. But it's having those tools and having these practices to have this inner dialogue and this like intimacy with yourself. And then trust is a huge piece. I mean, I felt like I could have had trust tattooed on my wrist, because there's so much letting go of this false feeling of control, right? I just have to put one foot in front of the next. I have to trust that it will work out. It's always worked out in the past. And, I feel like, having moved to other countries and cities, I do have some evidence that it works out. But I think that we can also look to other people for that evidence if we haven't done it before, and say, I see that there are always challenges, but that there's growth with those challenges. I mean, even watching my kids through this process, it's challenging for them, but I can see them growing, as people, as little individuals, and having to present themselves to new people in a new way. And it's an opportunity for them. They're scared and they're excited. So it's like having the ability to feel both, and let ourselves have that full spectrum.
Right. I think that's a great recommendation you made too, of looking to others for examples as well, because I know sometimes it holds us back, right? It's like, well, I want to try these new things, or I want to get out of my comfort zone, but I've never done it before. So I don't really know if I'm going to be able to do it. And then what do I do? Right. But
Mhm.
that's exactly it, is that there are 7 billion people on the planet. There have been billions of people before us. Likely someone has done something like this before. And so we're not really starting from scratch, even though it feels like it. We can use these examples, whether they're mentors or coaches or family or friends, or we read books. There are so many places we can learn from others' examples.
Yeah. And I think always, especially recently, this idea is really important to me, that at any point we have permission to pivot, to rewrite the story, to change lanes. Like, all of that is false evidence, the stuff that keeps us. It's really us looking out into the world and in our identity, and that we've sort of carved out, like, well, this is how people see me. And I really want to encourage everyone, if you have something on you, that intuition, that tug, that thing you really you long for and can't let go of, then go for it, because there's so much joy in recognizing that we have way more freedom than our mind gives us credit for. Because it wants to
Yes.
keep us safe, right?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. We have talked about that so many times on this show before, about how really our brains are designed to keep us safe. And for your brain, the safest place is right where you are. Even if where you are isn't that awesome, right? It's not working for you. But change is so hard for our brains because there's so much uncertainty and so much unknown. And that's exactly what I always recommend as well, is focusing on those possibilities of where things might go to get out of that place where we feel stuck.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's just it, right? Vision of we don't have to have it all. And for me, in fact, I had mentors who would always say like when you have a crystal clear vision of where you're going, you'll be able to go. And I always felt a little stuck around that. But what I did know is I was looking for an energy. I was looking for a feeling. And so I began to trust that. Like when I get somewhere, if I came out here to look at houses or come visit, like I always had this feeling that I belong, that I was supposed to be here. So sometimes, yes, I believe in vision boards. I think all that's important, but also like, what's the feeling you want? How do you want to feel in the space? Or, if you're thinking whatever it is we want to change, our environment, our job, our identity, like what is the feeling that we are trying to get more closer to?
I like that. And I really like focusing on the feeling as well, because then that helps us avoid that trap of always just going after a goal, right? Like you said, like when I get to this place, then I'll feel
Hmm.
fantastic and everything will be great and everything will be amazing, right? That's rarely the case. And often when we get there, we're left feeling, now what? What's next, right? So rather than that destination, really focusing on that journey and that feeling and how we want to be in ourselves throughout that
Hmm.
process.
Yeah, absolutely. The journey is what we have, right? We don't actually know how many more days or, we have a finite number of breaths. Somebody said to me the other day, there's a book they recommended and it talks about like our 4,000 weeks, I think.
Okay.
And in a lifetime, like it's not that long.
No.
And so, just really moving away from the sense, like you said, of the destination and just being in the and like coming back to the present, as you were describing, is so helpful. Just that right at your desk or right where you are when that feeling of overwhelm comes or the fear of making the change. It's like just come back into your body and ground into the feeling of where you are and then what you're searching for.
I like that. Speaking of books, this is a new question I'm asking everyone. If I was your best friend, what book would you recommend I read? It can be fiction or nonfiction.
Mm, I am reading a book called, I have it out here, Happier. Okay, I have to get the name. So it's Happier by Tal Ben Shahar. And it's all about this conversation, actually, about how so many of us are like on the hamster wheel. And then there's kind of the opposite where you're like, oh, only if it feels good, like only in the moment. And how to kind of find the balance between the two and where real lasting fulfillment and joy lives. So
Oh,
it's
fantastic.
really
Okay, I
good.
wrote that one
Yeah.
down. I'm going to put it in the show notes for everyone as well so they can find it if they're interested. Well, thank you so much, Anya, for coming on the show. I really appreciated it.
Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure to be here.
If folks want to find out more about you, they want to work with you, where can they go?
So you can go to my website, which is www.anyarock.com. Anya is spelled Aine and then Rock. And I'm on Instagram, Anya_rockyourjoy. And I'm actually launching a new membership. So check out my website in the coming weeks because I'm going to create a community for exactly this kind of conversation of how we can just be in this energy together of mindfulness and joy and working toward, the pursuit of a beautiful life.
Thank you one more time for being on the show. And thank you, everyone listening at home. I'm Dr. Nicole Byers, and you're listening to the Bold Life Podcast.